Hey there, everybody. It is Matt Busby here. We're going to be doing a little bit of a track reference or a track breakdown. I'm going to be a little bit of a man behind the curtain today. We're just going to keep this kind of tight to our video because we're still kind of working out some of our stuff with Facebook Live and all that. So we're going to get into it. Feel free to send us questions and everything like that. We're kind of monitoring. We'll answer them as they are prudent. But we really want to focus on what we're doing on the racetrack. Like I said, we're doing 1A through 6. We really want to focus on the track positioning. We're not going to talk too much about lap times, or we may reference some mile an hour here and there. But most of this is going to be about track positioning. We may reference. You can see me down here in the bottom right, where my hands are. Where my eyes may be if my head's kind of really tilted or anything like that. But again, we're really doing this as a reference guide. So making sure that we're putting the car where we want to put the car. We're applying throttle or brakes where we want to, where it's the most efficient way to get through a particular corner. One thing that we get kind of, I get a hard time about is how we're taking 1A. So here we are, we're in my Z06, going into, click over here back to my V-Box, into braking. And you can see one thing that I've noticed a lot of folks doing, both from like race control, in the car, in data, and everything like that. Look at how close we are positioned to the pit wall. We can reach out and kind of touch it. We are not letting ourselves kind of fade. So one common mistake that we see a lot of people do specifically here at 1A, and we'll talk a little bit about it at 6 as well, is your eyes, right? Your eyes should be somewhere down here. You shouldn't be looking down here. You shouldn't be looking, you kind of catch a glimpse of the corner station. We don't have a flag or anything like that. But our eyes should be where we want the car to go. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to have our eyes pick up and be down the racetrack and have our hands start to follow our eyes. And so what you do, a lot of people who do this, you end up starting to cheat over onto the racetrack, and it costs you a little bit of time on your entry. So we're really, really far over to the pit wall. We're under braking. And then when we commit to our turn in, we're committing to our turn in. See where the car's kind of headed. See where my hands are. We're kind of looking like we're going toward the curb, because we are. A lot of people, like I said, they give me a little bit of a hard time. The Miss Dawn, who works Corner Station 1A, definitely says something about it. But we're keeping our left tires on the race surface, which the curbing is part of the race surface. But we are trying to open we're trying to get through 1A to open our entry to 1B. That's the purpose of this. We're not cutting the racetrack for the sake of cutting the racetrack. We're kind of being aggressive on our corner entry at 1A to open our hands and open our eyes to 1B. So here we are. Like I said, we're still on the race surface, but we are pretty far into the runoff over the curbing. What I've found is this is an all or nothing kind of situation. You can kind of see the discoloration of the paint there. If you are half a car length over to the left, you run the risk of having too much of the car on the asphalt surface versus the runoff surface, which is probably a 6 to 8 inch difference.
Really quick.
Yep.
Scott wants to know, what marker did you start your turn in for 1A?
Let's go back. I don't really use visual markers for turn in. I use my eyes, right? So I'm looking at my apex and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I want to get this car here, this is where I want the car to go, and my instinct kind of takes me there. I don't really use a visual reference for turn in. I don't like to rely on visual references to turn in, because if you're looking for a visual reference, you are not looking for your apex. So try to break out of that habit. But let's see, we're turning in at about the 1 marker. So we're starting to bend the car in at the 1 marker. You can see here we're doing about 84 miles an hour. But again, we're going over this curbing. Don't do it halfway. If you're gonna do it, commit to it, because you will. I've got a long tube header that has a big hole in it from doing it halfway. So we want to go all in if we're gonna take the curb, or not in at all. So we're gonna take this curb, and you can see again where the right side of this car is right now, how much more room we have, right? How much straighter we're pointed. You can see my hands, we're still, even this deep into 1A, look at where my hands are. I'm still turning to the right. So we're aiming for all of this to open our hands to get a really, really good run through 1B all the way to 2, because that's kind of like a little mini straight. It's a lot of wide open throttle time. The gap from the front straight to 1B is short. The gap from 1B to the apex of 2 is actually pretty long. So that's what we want to maximize. We don't want to bury a ton of speed into 1A and sacrifice it onto the mid corner and the exit of 1B. We're trying to get through the middle of 1A as quickly as possible, but with the focus in mind of opening our hands and opening the car to getting through 1B as quickly as possible. So again, my hands are still pointed to the right. And now we're straight, and look at where we're at. I'm not going to have to turn a whole 30, 40 degrees of wheel into it to get it through 1B. We've already made a lot of that. We've already we've already gotten that work done by setting the car up way track right going through 1A the way we did. We don't want to take much, if any, of the curbing on 1B. If you're taking that curbing, you probably went into 1A too deep, and now you are turning into 1B too shallow. So that curbing is pretty aggressive. If you're doing this right, you've already got the car loaded up pretty heavily. So if you've got the car loaded up really, really heavily, and then you add more load by going over the curb, you're gonna upset the car. You're gonna get a little slip. And we don't want to do that. We want to maximize the grip that we have. Sometimes in certain situations you can use that curb. It's going to pull the car a little bit. It's going to put more load on the right, but it's also going to pull the front of the car left. So again, if you kind of got into 1A too deep and you need to use the curb to pull the car left a little bit, you can do that. You'll see some of us do that in like the rain. We use the curbs to turn the car. If we can't get the front wheels to bite, we'll use the terrain to kind of point the car around. But we don't want to take a whole lot of curb. Another thing that I kind of want to point out, these blue lines, I've apexed right there. Look at how much earlier I am to the blue line. Something that a lot of folks don't realize is those blue lines are the safest possible apex option. So they're, in a lot of cases, they are very late. And they are very late to keep you safe. You're not going to early apex. We do a lot of school type atmosphere, things in our Corvette experience, in our HPDI, our novice groups for our HPDE groups. So we like to have our visual references for our instructors primarily to coach off of that are safe. In a lot of cases, the blue paint is not the fastest way through the corner. It is the safest way through the corner. So keep that in mind. If you are magnetizing yourself to that blue paint, it's not a hard and fast apex rule. So here we are. Like I said, I've apexed. I'm at the white panel right before the blue panel, which is way earlier, and I've already started swinging out. I'm on throttle. I'm trying to get the car as settled as much as I can to get to full throttle. You can see we're under a tremendous amount of side load, and again we're on a little mini straight. From the exit to 1A all the way to 2 is a really long linear distance, and we are just trying to optimize our VMAX through this sector.
Our friend Kevin Greer wants to know, will the power and speed of the vehicle change any of the 1A attack?
No. I mean, it's a momentum approach, right? We're trying to maintain as much momentum as possible, and anybody that says you drive a momentum car different than a horsepower car is not doing it right. Everything is a momentum car. Every car you drive is a momentum car. You want to maintain as much momentum as you can. Having that extra power just makes it a little bit easier. So we want to maximize our on throttle time regardless of what we're in. It's even more important in a lower horsepower car. I did the same thing in my BRZ to maximize as much mid-corner and corner out speed as I can, and opening up that entry. So here we are. We had a little moment there, got on throttle a little bit too much. Had a little slip. You can see we dropped quite a bit on our linear G, but we're a little bit over our track limits line. We're still technically on track for all of you race directors out there, so we're okay. And we're staring at the rumble strips here. So is our reaction to throw a whole bunch of wheel into it while we're on throttle to steer around those rumble strips? Hell no. We don't want to do that. We just want to really softly bring it back over. If you touch those rumble strips, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't hurt anything. What you don't want to do is go on the back end of them because they're really high on the back end. But if you just kind of roll over them a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. Don't be this guy that kind of overcorrected and now is spinning, careening toward the pit out wall. So we're on throttle, full throttle. You can see there where I kind of clipped the rumble strip, just getting the car where I want it to be. But we're on full throttle all the way here. In this car with the brakes that were on it is a little sketchy. We're braking a little early here, but this is something that we find ourselves kind of coaching people through a bunch in that, you don't want to overcommit. We don't want to overcharge turn 2 because it is bringing us onto the second longest straight on the racetrack. So the second longest straight from turn 2 all the way to turn 5 is actually a really, really important one. So we want to get a nice clean entry and a really planted mid-corner and corner out. We don't want to have to be collecting the car after we've committed to turn 2, because it's so important to maximize our full throttle time. If we're having to collect the car, if we're having to make corrections, we're giving up mile an hour when we get down here to turn 5. So in a lot of cases that we find ourselves, it's not so much picking a point, but mentally go through the practice of thinking, okay, I'm coming up to turn 2, I need to over brake. I need to slow the car down way more than I think I do to get a really, really clean entry into the middle of the corner. So you can see the car kind of wiggling all over the place because this thing just does not want to stop. We're still all the way over here. Again, this is another great place to make sure that your eyes are not tricking your hands into cheating your entry. So we want to make sure that we're still all the way over track left, driver's left. Even if to the point where you're feeling a little bit of the rumble strips on the left side of the car, which is probably why the car is so upset with me right now. And then right there at about the end of the rumble strips, you can see that's where we're committing our hands. Look at where my eyes are, look at where my hands are going, and it's a little bit of the flat nature of it. It's a little bit of a weird apex in that you can't really see your actual apex point till right now, right? So you're turning in knowing where you want the car to go, but your exact car placement doesn't kind of become apparent until after you've committed your turn in. So you really have to be comfortable with knowing where you are on the racetrack and knowing where you want the car to be. So it's really important to have your eyes up and far down. Understanding that the more vision and the more information that you're taking in, the better decisions you're going to make. So just make sure that we're keeping our eyes up through here, even though relatively the track is pretty shallow. Our vision could get shallow here really, really easy. We want to be looking as far down the racetrack as we can. Here we are. The blue paint doesn't lie to us this time. It's actually a great reference. We're getting there. We're on throttle. And then we're going to let it take us all the way out to the rumble strips on the left. All the way out there. Don't be afraid of it. See this curbing over here? That curbing is it's a mistake. That's a piece of curb that we put in when we were pointing at places on a map. Before a drip of asphalt ever got put down onto this racetrack, that curb was decided it was going there. It has no business being there. We don't use it. You shouldn't use it. You shouldn't be anywhere near it. And then we're going to kind of bend the car all the way around through the corner. This is one of those situations where, again, we're trying to maximize full throttle time. I'm full throttle here. But you don't want to, it's a big no-no, is to under full acceleration, full throttle. You don't want to be adding throttle or at maximum throttle and add steering angle. That's a recipe for disaster, right? So we want to get, it's really important to have calm hands here and to be trying to open our hands as much as possible, slowly but distinctly. And that's going to bring us all the way out here to the rumble strips again, to the point where, hey, I'm going to touch the rumble strips. Now for all you folks who are, here mid-track or over to the right or something like that, I can't communicate how much time you're costing yourself by holding your hands too long through the middle of 2 and 3. You don't want to be carrying your hands at a 15 or 20 degree steering angle, driver's right, for too long. It's really important that as you are getting back to throttle, that you are opening your hands. Even if it's very, very slowly, you have to be focusing on opening your hands and getting the car all the way over here while maintaining as much acceleration as you can safely. So we're going into turn 4 here. This is a piece of curbing up here. We're always checking our corner stands. This is a piece of curbing here that we put in because me and Mitch kept on putting wheels off, and we dug a big old rut into the dirt, and our maintenance crew got tired of fixing it, so we put it on there. It's racetrack now. You can use it. So we want to use every square inch of it, right? So we want to, for every inch we are driver's right here. Right here, it saves us a little bit of corner steering angle and a little bit of load on the chassis when we have to make that left to get into 5. So use it. It's part of the racetrack. Use it. Here we are entering the really, really fast turn 5. We want to make sure that we're setting the car up. I'm a little different the way I set this up. I'm trying to maximize my entry angle, so I cheat the car over to the left. I'm still full throttle here. This is a full throttle corner in everything I've driven. You should be flat in this, with the exception of maybe some confidence lifts in like a ZR1 or GT2 RS on a street tire or something like that. But everything else, you should be full throttle through here, and you should be full throttle to about right there, right? And this may be, I may be lifting a little early right here because of my lack of confidence in the brakes in this car right now. At the time this was done. But look at how far we are. We're not all the way over track left, but we have cheated over to open our hands and open our entry to turn 5. We're definitely trying to maximize our entry into the, our mile per hour entry while keeping the car settled, because we're going really fast and we don't want to, lose the rear or something like that. Generally, most cars, the way they're set up, you need to feel it out, but generally, with as long radius as this is, if you enter this corner too quickly, you're going to pick up understeer, usually first, not oversteer. You're not doing a huge steering input, or at least you shouldn't be doing a huge steering input to get into 5. It should be a pretty slow input, so if you're going too fast, generally you're going to pick up an understeer rather than a snap oversteer or something like that. But obviously that comes down to the way your car's set up. But just know that it's something you need to feel out. So entering the corner, again, we're cheating over as much as we can. We're trying to maintain as much entry speed as we can, and it's just a big long sweeper. We had that big little wiggle on the way in. This car's kind of set up a little loose. We scrubbed a few mile an hour. But here we are, we're looking at our blue paint again. Blue paint doesn't lie at this quarter. We're gonna use it. And we're just picking up throttle and trying to get into turn 6. Again, so this was actually kind of a little bit of a sloppy entry into 6. I did not carry. Look at how much racetrack is out there on the left of me. And that's gonna cost me a little bit here in turn 6. So we're going to try and get out there, but you can see the car kind of lurching left and right. It really, really, really does not want to decelerate. But we're trying to get the car as far driver's left as we can. One thing that we have noticed a bunch, we actually worked with a couple of people here recently, in that most people are burying the car a little bit late into this corner. Again, looking for that blue Apex paint, which in turn 6 specifically is way late. Our turn in is actually going to happen really, really early, like at the corner of the grass kind of early. And the apex of this corner is actually way earlier than you think it is. You've got a lot of racetrack out on the left-hand side, and if you can get the car in nice and settled.
Really quick, before you go to turn 6, Brian wants to know, how much speed can you carry through 5?
That depends on all kinds of different stuff. What car you're in, what your wheelbase is, what tire you're on, all that kind of fun stuff. It's generally, most street cars, 95 miles an hour is pretty, attainable. Some cars, maybe a little bit lower, 92, 93. Aero, an Aero slick tire, kind of well set up car we've seen data up to 110, 111 miles an hour in the middle of the corner. So just feel it out. It's something that kind of matters in how you roll the speed in. But again, we talked a little bit at 1A and 1B how the run from 1A to 1B is actually kind of short. Like our linear distance is really short compared to our 1B to 2. Remember that your apex of 5 to your braking of 6 is a really, really, really short distance. So you're not going to make up a whole bunch of time on your exit of 5. You're making up a ton of time on your entry to 5. That's your longer linear distance. So you want to roll as much speed as you can to where you can get the car settled for braking where we are right now at turn 6.
Specifically, they want to know your car. What speed are you carrying through 5?
So the arrow, once we put the arrow on, I think we're rolling 105, 106 miles an hour. This is at Time Trial Nationals, no arrow, and that's on a 285 RE71R. So the wings, shout out to 9 Lives Racing. The wings do a really, really big job as to keeping the car settled and composed, rolling a lot of speed in.
Have heard you have hit 115 in 5. Is that true, Matt?
Slick tire car with arrow, yes. It's pretty sketchy.
And then Kevin, again, wants to know, is late apex into 6 the biggest mistake for most? Spins off of 6 are common.
So what a lot of people do is they don't brake enough. They turn in a little bit late, and it puts them on a goofy trajectory because they turned in late with too much speed. And so it kind of, you pick up this big understeer on the way out. We've seen that a lot on data. The trick is, you want to turn it a little bit early, but you're also you want to scrub just a little bit more speed than you think you need to, in order to get a really good run from the apex of 6 to the middle of the braking of 8. Because again, that's like a little mini straight. In most cars, 7's not flat, but a 7 is like a lift to get some weight on the nose, to get some grip on the nose. So here, we're gonna kind of stick with 6. We're turning in kind of earlier than most people are. We miss our apex here because we rolled a little bit too much speed in, and then we're taking it all the way out to our rumble strips here. So the apex for 6. Hang on. The apex of 6 is actually somewhere in this neighborhood. It's not all the way back here. You kind of want to apex a little bit earlier, and it'll take you out. You can see I've got a lot of wheel in the car, and I added a little bit of extra wheel at the apex, and that's just because the car was understeering. Car's understeering probably because I rolled a little bit too much speed into it. It might be a setup thing. But it picked up a little bit of understeer mid-corner, and I had to add a little bit of extra wheel, which probably made it a little bit worse. Might have got me through the corner, but I did not get where I wanted to get. I want to get probably another foot or so over to the right. I want to get the car a little bit further driver's right. Like I said, I want to apex probably about where that red and white line is. And it's what it is. We can't have a perfect car every time, but this is how we learn, right? So we're gonna get through 6. Our eyes should be up our eyes should be somewhere down here. We shouldn't be looking over here, because if you're looking over here, you're going to drive off. We're trying to get the car down here. This is where we want to go, so this is where we want to put our eyes, right? So pick up our eyes, let the car take us as far as we're comfortable. Don't go off into the dirt here, but we're going to go all the way out to the rumble strips here and set ourselves up. Look, notice again, our eyes down here are down here at the apex of 7, but our hands are still straight. We don't want to let our hands kind of travel towards 7. This is kind of probably where I should cut it off. We'll probably take it a little bit further to kind of keep reference as to where our car positioning is. But we want to keep the car as far driver's left as we can. This is a tricky area. We're going downhill, and it is just a hair off camber. So it's the absolute worst case scenario for front end grip. Whereas as soon as we get to apex, you can see the racetrack. The racetrack starts going uphill, but more importantly, the racetrack goes on camber. Following the natural topography. So we go from kind of worst case scenario to best case scenario for lateral grip. So the limiting factors from your exit to 6 to your entry to 7, the limiting factor is front end grip, and so we want to maximize that with our car positioning. If we start cheating over driver's right too much, we're costing ourselves so much time and so much momentum having to get the car through 7 with that much more shallow of an entry. So we want to keep the car almost on the grass all the way down until we can get the car down into 7. That's where we're going to cut it off today.
Well, really quick, let's just do one playthrough from turn 1A to 6, a fluid playthrough.
Sure.
And then you all will save this as a reference, and we can see if we can upload this portion of the video to the comments too.
Yeah, the whole video is up on, I can put a link to YouTube for a couple of different videos to where you can watch the whole deal. So that's a full playthrough. Like I said, we can put a link in for the full video. We're gonna kind of pick this up we'll probably pick up at 6 and go from 6 to probably 14 or 15 next week. That'll be a kind of an ongoing thing, but it's something to reference. This is going to be up on the NCM Motorsports Park Facebook page forever. So if you want to add questions or ask questions later, feel free to drop those in, and I'm more than happy to answer them. Thanks, guys, and hope this helped.